to this edition, which focuses on me completing the top of the control panel, installing the switches and wiring up the common power center pin among all the switches. To help you fix, as I talk about the dates on which I'm doing things, today's the 27th of August and all the running sessions and this bit and the end were done today. But the others have been done throughout August as we've dodged in and out of various things that we've been doing and various sets of guests coming to stay with us. So let me take you back right to the beginning of August when I decided finally to start work on doing the control panel top. In the last few days I have started work on the control panel proper. It is today the 10th of August and I started to think about how I would video the work on building the control panel because I don't want it to become a really huge long video. So I thought what I would do is do little bits and bring you in at stages rather than lengthy explanations what I'm going to do and then a big reveal at the end. So the first thing that I thought I would have a go at doing, because it's the thing that was causing me the most concern, was seeing how easy or otherwise it would be to start wiring up switches in the board. And as it turned out, I couldn't have done anything more useful than this bit of work. Not for the original reason that I started, but I'll come on to that. So I had some spare switches which are the same size as the ones that I'm using, but rather than the center off switches that I've got, these are the standard on, off, on switches that stay on, up or down until you turn them to the off position. So I put those in and I also wanted to see how easy it would be to separate the wire along its length to attach them to the switches, because as you may know, my idea is that the common will run as a single length of wire through all the switches. So that actually worked tolerably well. If I bring this here so you can see it in the camera. And the DCC Concepts wire strippers, which I mean they're DCC Concepts branded, these things, but that's a pretty standard size, worked an absolute treat. And you can I mean others that have used it will know you can fix the amount by which you wish the wires to part. You don't have to use the full length of the separation that is possible. I realized pretty quickly as I started using it. So that was a really useful experiment in being able to get that wire in. I have already separately worked out, and when I come to do it I'll show you an image of the way the wire will wend its way round so it doesn't cross over itself. That's a bit like doing I can't remember which puzzles they were. They were a great favorite of my grandmother, where you have to take a line from one place to another and mustn't cross over itself. But I've worked that out and I completed that and thought, well, I'll just see what this is like when I put this on the frame of the control panel, just to make sure what depth there would be of wires and things, which is what I was ostensibly trying to do. When I put it onto the control panel, I discovered that all of these holes here, these two here, are very, very close to the bottom frame of the control panel frame. So I put this one in and tried to fit it into the frame, and it didn't quite go. It was only out by 3-4 millimeters perhaps, but it was a very, very tight fit. It just shows the value, Ian will love to hear this at Ian's Engage, of experimentation and testing. What that meant was that I realized that I had to move all of these up, because I couldn't just move these ones without crowding the holes that are above them. So I'll just take you over now to the second section of this first bit on the 10th of August and show you what that actually meant in terms of the diagram and the drilling of the perspex. As you can see, I'm about 2/3 of the way through in drilling the perspex, and I'm not going to tempt the perspex gods by talking about whether it's going well or not. But if you look at the bottom here, this is upside down, by the way. What I had to do was bring the bottom of this up by, I decided to bring it up by 10 millimeters. I had plenty of space at the top. And the holes have all drilled quite happily at the top, and that will make sure that the switches, that was the switch that I showed you that clashed with the bottom of the with the frame, and this switch was a bit close for my liking, and I also thought that LED would be a bit tight too. So I've just got the final third of the holes to drill. The main thing I think that I've discovered in all of this is that you really must clamp this down very well indeed. You don't want the perspex to be able to move up as the drill is moving through it. I had that in one or two at the top. Didn't cause me a problem overall, but it meant that you couldn't get force down to complete the hole. So I've got this last third to do, which is now what I'll get on with, and when I have finished I will show you what the final result is once all this has been drilled. It's now the 12th of August, and I've got to the point now where I've finished doing all the drilling and then the work afterwards, which I had to do to make everything smooth, and I'll explain that in a bit more. So if I remove the paper, ta-da, those are all the holes happily drilled. I found when I finished, I did a few tests with both the switch and the LED enclosures, that not all the holes were the right size, that the drill hadn't gone far enough through to completely complete the hole. So by using another drill, a different drill that I had, which were precisely the right size, I was able to use them essentially as broaches to make sure that all the holes were the correct diameter. There was also, both on this, which is the top side, and the underside, burrs really on the top of the holes where the plastic had been moved up as the drill went through. So I've spent a bit of time getting that all flat, because I don't want, particularly when I go to do the next thing, which I've got to do on here, I don't want to find that as I go over a hole there's plastic that's stopping this from sticking or fitting things properly. But either way, it's all done. Unless it's going to crack now. I didn't have any horrible cracks. There were cracking sounds as I was drilling, but I think that was just the sound of the drill biting into the plastic and exiting the other side where I was getting the cracking sounds. The next thing for me to do is the lining, and the reason these are marked up is because this tells me the furthest extent of the lining to the left and to the right, and this gives me the extent of the lining here and a little bit here, so that I can eventually just cut the bits off and whip this tape off. To line the sheet, which is the next job that I've got to do, if I bring this in, the observant of you will see that this is a mirror image, because I haven't printed one off that's the right way around. This is a mirror image because it's ready for when I do the wiring, so that when I'm looking at this underneath, I'm seeing the holes in the position they'll be when you're looking at it from the other side, which is vital for when the red line is the thing I was talking about earlier, is the route that the common will take through all the switches. To do the lining, I am using this tape, which is actually intended for whiteboards, to be able to mark off squares or any other shape that you care to try and fashion it into on a whiteboard. And that's what I'm going to be using to give the lines. When I do that, I will screw this down to a piece of wood so that this can't move around when I'm working on it. A nice big piece of wood which I can clamp to the desk. And I will also probably use this long ruler, 24-inch ruler, which I can also then clamp down on the top of this, so that I've got a nice straight edge to stretch the lining material across. So I'm going to go off and start doing that, and oh yes, there's one other thing. I had also hoped to start work on putting the transfers on that will show what the various things are, but I was thwarted by the paper that I had for making water slide transfers. First of all, despite it being called clear, it turned out that it wasn't clear. It had a white backing. But more worryingly, notwithstanding having several coats of acrylic varnish on the top of it, a fixative to stop the ink from running, as soon as it went in the water, the ink just lifted straight off the paper. However, I have some new paper on its way to me, and I'll give that a go. But if all else fails, there are companies that will make sheets of A4 sheets of water slide transfers, and if I have to send it off to get done by them, I will. But with any luck, the paper that's coming and the acrylic varnish that I've got, which is recommended to be used with it, should allow me to make the water slide transfers. So that's it. I will come back once I've got a little way along doing this lining, so you can see how it's progressing. Today is the 18th of August, and I've been able to return to working on this. I know I said in the last section that I would come back when I was part of the way through putting these lines on, because I rather feared that this was going to take a long time to do. In the event, it didn't, and really before I knew where I was, I'd finished, which came as a bit of a surprise. It was very straightforward to do. I know some of the lines look as though they're continuous, but they've all now been cut at the holes, and I've left the excess so that when I put the switch, or the not so much the switches actually, the LED holders through, it will help bind the tape down in place rather than cutting it right at the edge, because I could guarantee that it would sort of flick up when I was working on it. The next thing for me to do on this is to put the transfers on, and I was not able, unfortunately, to be able to print my own transfers. The new transfer paper that came did a much better job of retaining the ink from my printer, but even after many coats of fixative, a very slight bleeding was happening on some of the transfers. And I just didn't want to take the risk that, you get a transfer down on this and then it starts bleeding. So I went with the idea that I mentioned of uploading to companies that make waterslide transfers. And the one I went with was LA Ink Printing Studio. And I'll put a link in the description below to their website. And I was really impressed with the service, because I uploaded the JPEG image just before midday on the 14th, I think it was, and at about midday on the 15th, the postman delivered the waterslide transfers. Now, okay, I'd paid for first class post, so that's fine, but the speed with which these were produced and sent to me was really very impressive. And I've had a go this morning just with one, just to make sure it didn't bleed, which is on this side if I turn this over. So that's on there now, and I've broken out the microsol and microset. If you've not seen these before, can't remember who introduced me to them, but they're used to help get decals on to adhere to a surface, but also to form round a surface if there are lumps and bumps. But it was principally, I used these when I was renumbering locomotives, and you needed the decals to form over the lines on the tender, for example. So the first thing you do is you paint the micro set on where you're going to put the waterslide transfer, and that helps it adhere. And then you use the microsol to seal it in place and help it soften so that it can form round whatever shape it's sitting on. But they're really very useful, so I should be using those. And I will set to work on putting the transfers on, and come back when I've finished that bit of work, because after that I think we'll need to start thinking about getting the switches in so that I can wire those up. So I'll speak to you again either today or possibly tomorrow. It's now the 19th of August, and as you'll have seen from the previous section, I started work yesterday on putting the transfers on. The original idea of that section was that you would have seen me, not for a whole great length of time, going right the way through to the end, but I forgot to check how much battery my phone had. So I didn't get to record very much. However, you can see that it's a fairly straight thing to put the slides on. One thing I didn't mention when I spoke about the transfers that I had made was how cheap they were. The A4 sheet was £1.20, and I've bought 2 sheets so that I've got plenty of spares if anything gets scratched or needs replacing over time. And in fact, the biggest cost, I think, in the whole thing was £4 something for the postage. But a very good value, and as I said, I'll put a link in the description below to the company that I used. So here you can see the completed panel. This morning it's had a couple of coats of a matte acrylic spray that's strongly recommended to protect the transfers anyway, and in any event I wanted to take a little bit of the shine off the perspex. So with this bit completed, I can now move to putting the switches in. So what I'm going to do now is get all the switches put in, and I will start putting the wire in and come back once I'm a little way through doing that, because I don't think you really need to see the difference between this without switches and without actually having got a good way in getting it wired up. And that may be where the video comes to an end at this point, because the next stage is the really complicated bit, and I fear that's going to take me quite some time, but we'll see. So I'll speak to you again in a day or two's time when I've got some switches in which have been wired with the common which brings the power to them. Well, as you can see, I've completed the wiring. It was all pretty straightforward, it has to be said. The wire strippers worked really well. It was really straightforward to be able to part the wire just the distance I needed to be able to attach it to the center pin. One thing I noticed actually pretty quickly is that once you parted the wire, the 2 bits of the wire tried to spring back quite quickly, which was actually really helpful because it meant that you could afford to go a little bit wider than you needed to give you time to solder this on, and it would then spring back before I had to go to the next one. But this was a very straightforward piece of work. What I'm going to do now, because looking at the back of a wired up thing is not much fun, is I'll take it up onto the layout so you can see what it looks like completed with its switches in from the front. Well, after months of talking about doing this thing, we are actually getting somewhere in this looking like the control panel that I want it to be. Obviously the LEDs are not in here yet, and they will all go in, and that's the next big job, which will be a big job, and I shall take it very slowly. I have tested this in that I wired up, I think it was this switch, I wired up this switch in a bit of a lash up really, just to test that when I flicked it, the point that is here changed, and it did, which is which is encouraging. So if nothing else, I will be able to change the points again once I wire all this up, even if I don't get the lights working, which I'm quite sure I will. I just need to take it bit by bit. What I am going to do though, as the next step, is make sure every one of these switches works before I get too far down wiring things up to find I've got a duff switch and it's all sort of wired in. So that's the next thing, just to test all of these work in the sense that it will change a point, because I can just take the 2 clips that I temporarily put on here and attach them to everyone and make sure that that point goes across. So that then leaves me with the big job to do of starting to get the wiring in. I want to test also the point indicator units. There's no reason why they shouldn't work properly. I have also replaced the power unit and CDU that I was using, because it occurred to me that it's just possible when I fouled everything out last time round, one or other of those may not work quite as intended. So I got a completely fresh start. Everything should work hunky-dory, he said, but we'll wait and see. So that really brings this episode to a close. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the development of this from a wooden template into the real thing. And I hope you've enjoyed the running sessions. I've had great fun doing the running sessions. I don't think I've had so many different locomotives and coaches and wagons out for some time. And you do forget when you're doing all the modelling that part of the reason you do this is to play trains occasionally. If you've got any comments, please do let me have your comments. I'm always grateful to receive them. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. That's really very helpful. And also subscribe, because as you can see, there's more work to be done here. And as we get into the autumn, I really will be looking forward to getting my baseboards so that I can start work on the underground layout, which should be jolly good. So until I speak to you again in about a couple of weeks' time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.